Welcome to Twice 5 Miles Radio, fertile ground for conversations worth listening to and remembering. I'm your host, James Navé, always airing first on WPVM LP, Asheville 103.7, and streaming online, WPVMFM.org, the voice of Asheville heard all over the world, and on other community radio stations like KCEI, Cultural Energy Radio, coming out of Taos, New Mexico. Thank you, Walter Parks, for our theme song. WalterParks.com for more on Walter's music. Devine Dial, thank you for managing WPVM-FM in Asheville. Robin Collier, thank you for doing the same. KCEI Cultural Energy Radio, coming out of Taos, New Mexico. You can always reach me, Navé at jamesnavé.com. I would love to hear from you. What are you doing in the world? What's your story? I would be happy to receive an email from you if you're so moved to do such a thing. Navé at jamesnavé.com. Navé is spelled Nave. I'd like to remind you that this episode of Twice 5 Miles Radio is sponsored by the Imaginative Storm Writing Project. If you'd like to sharpen your writing in a low-pressure, high-energy way, you can always go to imaginativestorm.com. Every Thursday and Saturday, we host a free 1-hour writing prompt gathering. 10 minutes of writing, then we share, laugh, and learn. No pressure, just a pen, a prompt, and a community. I have one more thing to remind you of before we get on with the show. This is especially for you if you're listening to this in Taos. If you are free on Friday evening, June the 6th, from 5 to 7 p.m., consider stopping by the Taos Community Center, TCA, for our gala opening of Taos Portraits 2, Photos by Paul O'Connor. This is a free event. It celebrates the launch of Paul's new book, featuring black and white portraits of artists who have helped shape the spirit of Taos over the past 35 years. Allegra Houston and I will be hosting the event. We'll have a gallery gathering and a live presentation by featured artists. Afterwards, we'll head over to Hotel Willa for a casual after-party. You're invited to come as you are, or dress up if you feel so moved. You can learn more about Paul's project at taosportraits.com. So today I have someone new whom I've never met. Her name is Barbara Lane. Her book is titled Broken Water, and it's a true story about growing up in the foster care system. And she had a lot of sisters around her, and those sisters came and went. So it's a story of coming and going. It's a story of figuring out what to do next. It's a story of childhood rising her into adulthood. Barbara Lane, welcome to Twice 5 Miles Radio.
Well, thank you for having me, James. I'm delighted to be here. It's exciting to speak with you finally.
Well, I'm excited too, and I'm particularly excited because you have a subject that you are working with, and you've been working with a long time. It's the topic of your book, Broken Water, and it's about childhood trauma, childhood abuse.
Yeah. Yeah.
And by extension, it's about how our culture nurtures us, how our culture abuses us. And that's a spectrum in between abuse, nurturing, and also the title, Broken Water. I love that title because, first of all, when a woman is giving birth, what happens first? The water breaks.
Right.
When Jesus walked on the water, it did not break. He was able to walk on the water. When you look at water, you know it sustains you because you must drink in order to live. Your body is made up of 80% water. Can water even be broken?
No, I don't believe it can, except if you look at a wave that will break on the shore, or water will break down a waterfall, or a woman's water breaks at birth. Yes, but I think that there is the truth that water, chemically cannot be broken. But in our case, for us 11 sisters, I believed it did. That the nurturing that we lacked, or the family system that we were born into, created an impossible situation for us, which it's possible to break water. So when I think of our biological mother, who I really never knew, I think, she broke water in more ways than what we would think. So, it's also a title that I thought water means so many things to so many people. It's nurturing, it's reviving, it's, scary to some people, it's soothing to others. that, the reader can kind of metaphorically make sense of the title after they read the book or as they read the book in a way that, applies to them. And it may be some ways that I haven't even begun to think about.
It's interesting when you talk about broken water and saying your
Hmm.
mother was there and she broke water in many ways. Have you ever
Hmm.
imagined what it would have been like, you and your sisters, had the water remained calm?
I have no idea what it would have been like. I mean, because I think it's important to say that I had some calmness in my first 3 years of life, but it wasn't because of my mother or my father. It was because I was the ninth of 11 girls, and my eldest sisters really cared for me, really loved me, really babied me, really. I thought my life was wonderful and remember it. I know they say you don't remember when you're 3. Yes, you do, or you can, because I certainly do. The things that I remember once I reunited with my sisters after 43 years, I asked them, is this memory accurate? Is this how I remember the room to be? And was the rug brown? And did we live high up in a building? We lived in the projects of St. Louis, downtown St. Louis. You can remember, and I did. So I always had calm waters with my sisters. They loved me, nurtured me, sang to me. And when our family fell apart, I was 3. 6 of us went into the orphanage. A few were older, they were already married. We're going back some years. So, back then you got married when you're 16 or 17. They lived far enough away from the apartment that the rest of us were in that they couldn't walk it. They didn't drive back then, right? They were home already busy making babies. And you had a telephone, but you had to pay for how many calls you made. So a very different time, right? So their connection with what was going on in that apartment was limited. Our mother, what she did, she had a boyfriend and then another and another. She kicked our father out and then she turned off the heat and the water, packed up her bags, took the youngest of us at the time with her, my younger sister Pam, and left us. And we were there 3 days before a neighbor figured out something's not right. And then they sent Catholic Charities in to rescue us, I guess you would say, then placed us in an Italian orphanage. And I was not traumatized. I had my sisters. They loved me, sang to me. My trauma was James when they started splitting us up and I could see them leaving. They had little suitcases in their hands. And I didn't know where they were going. I didn't understand foster care or why my sisters were leaving and then I didn't see them anymore. That was my trauma.
Interesting, your sisters taking care of you,
Mm-hmm.
and for the first three
Oh,
years, you didn't know
yeah.
anything was wrong. I'm
No.
thinking now, as you're talking,
Mm-hmm.
mothering is a really important thing. Your sisters mothered you. Do you think the object of mother, as in my mother as a person, is overrated, while the need to be mothered is what really has the value here? The mother,
Yeah.
quote unquote. Can you speak
Mm-hmm.
to the relationship between those two ideas? Because we often conflate that.
Mm-hmm.
I
I
lost
think
my
so.
mother. I lost my mother. My grandmother raised me. Well, then
Mm-hmm.
grandmother becomes mother.
So the only way I can really address that question, which is really, I think, a good, deep, important question, is I had no feelings at all toward my biological mother, none at all. And when we sisters reunited, I literally fell in their arms. I knew their smell, their touch, and I said to myself, I'm home. But 2 years later, the older sisters decided to bring me to the gravesite of my biological mother. And I sobbed. And I thought to myself, I'm sobbing over the, the grave of someone I never knew, that I had no connection to. So, as much as I want to say that connection wasn't important, It was at some level, because at some level you still know the woman who birthed you, you weren't good enough, you would think, or they didn't love you enough, there's still that longing to have your mommy. I think my resilience, which I think all of us sisters are incredibly resilient, came not from my mother, not from any nurturing from her at all. Although, how do I know? At a year, maybe she was nice to me. I don't remember that far back. But my resilience came from my sisters, from their tenderness and kindness toward me. I know that that made me resilient. So it's not a perfect answer to your question, but it's an honest answer that I sat over her grave and just sobbed.
You were weeping
Hmm.
with a sense of loss, and yet
Yes,
you didn't know your mother.
right.
What was the loss that you were feeling? And I love the idea of reminding us that we do remember being born, even if we can't quite recall it. Every experience we've ever had is in there somewhere.
Somewhere.
It's just
Yeah.
waiting to be
Yeah.
invited to bubble up, even those
Right.
first moments of breath, and you
Right.
cry out after birth. So there is a memory there. It was a profound sense of loss. Do
Yeah,
you
terrible
remember?
sense of loss.
Do you remember
Yeah.
when you were crying?
Mm.
Were you aware of what was going on and why, or did you find pleasure in it? Did you find relief? Did you find what?
It was utterly confusing to me why I felt such a heartbreak standing over her grave. And then as time went on, and I had just an incredible therapist and mentor who helped me through some of these horrors, but they explained to me that perhaps I was not crying for that specific loss, but for all the losses I had had in my childhood, with my mother being symbolic of that. You didn't have a mother, because the foster home I was put in, and you cannot make this up, James. We were put in, me and my one elder sister, she and I were placed in the home of a mafia grunt. It was not a good story. It just wasn't a pleasant experience, and we grew up there. So, the foster mother I had there wasn't a mother, hugging or nurturing or caring or anything like that. So that was a loss of a mother there that maybe could have filled that role, but didn't. Just a lot of loss. I think your use of the word loss is 100% accurate. And there was just some longing in me that I never had a mother. I had mother figures, which, I mean, I'm so blessed that I did, but they also lost their mother, you realize. So, that they carried their own loss with her, and they knew her. The older sisters knew her and lost her. So in many ways, I think it was much harder for them than for me.
Your mother, can you tell us her name? What do
Sure.
you know about the woman? What drove her? What did she grieve over? Why was she so driven to go beyond the sunset with or without her
Mhm.
children?
Hmm. Well, the story's told slowly over the course of the book, and I often say it depends on which sister you listen to or which sister's story is told. I know what happened at the end of the book. It describes what happened, but I think it's better for a reader to read all the stories up to that point so that they could glean an understanding of how that experience impacted each and every one of us. But, there was poverty involved, I can tell you that. There was a lot of alcohol involved. She had a lot of boyfriends. So she was very pretty, I'm told. There must have been some lack in her that she just constantly had babies, because I think that, when you have a newborn, you have total control over that baby. That baby needs you. The baby gets to be about 2, and then it struggles for its independence, right? And if a mother isn't mentally healthy, they're not going to like that at all. They'll have another baby. I think this is why many individuals in poverty, many women have lots and lots of babies, is that need to be needed. They want the neediness of that baby fills them, but babies grow up.
We're talking about abuse. We're talking
Hmm.
about loss. being
Mm-hmm.
marginalized, all of those words that we hear so much in many,
Right.
many conversations.
Right.
Also, our culture is a
Yeah.
culture of aggression. American culture is a culture of aggression. It's a culture of violence. We're founded on
Mm-hmm.
all kinds of violence. We are a gun culture. We're a culture that demands individuality, even though we may not understand quite what that means.
Right.
This is a reflection on culture. What was
Yeah.
the time frame your mother was living in? When was she born? And what did the culture look like for her as
So
she was growing up?
it's so interesting that you would ask that question because deep in the process of trying to figure that out and writing another book, which would really be a prequel, I guess, and to try to understand what would cause my biological mother to do what she did, what was her development like, what was the historical surroundings in her era, which, there were plenty from the plague to the war to the depression, just all the many things that I'm looking into and researching and where they were born. She was born in Memphis. What was it like when she was born? And what was it like for my father as well, who was born in a town called Hard Money, Kentucky? So I went to Hard Money and found out consists of a stop sign as of these days, but found a cemetery there called in Hard Money Baptist Church, which they had all the lane markers and plots. And so I called my eldest sister, who's now 90, but it's just sharp as anything. Said, did you know this name? Do you remember this? I kind of remember that name. Oh, yeah, that was this one and that one. So I know I found my ancestors' graves, their plots and their sites and the names. So I'm researching a lot of things with the expressed intention of figuring out transgenerational abuse. What could they have experienced at such a young age? For example, I'll give this tip away. My father, I found out, was one of 9 children. It's going to be funny. What I'm about to tell you makes me my own cousin in some weird way. But my father's mother and my mother's father divorced their spouse and married each other. Okay, so, by law, I'm my own cousin, but, it's just kind of strange. She did it. When my father's mother did that, she put all her kids in an orphanage. Okay, we all ended up in an orphanage. My father ended up in an orphanage. So this transgenerational thing I think is so important because if we want to prevent child abuse, where do we intervene? We keep trying to intervene with the poor child that's already been abused. But what if you healed the mother? What if you healed the father? What impact does that have now on a child that may skip that generation and then have healthier families? So that's the premise of my book. It's going to take me a lot of research. I'm enjoying the research, and I'm sure it's my own soul's search for what could have happened to make her do this, to develop that way.
When you describe Memphis as the birthplace of your mother and then Hard
Uh-huh.
Money, Kentucky as the birthplace of your father,
Right.
you referenced the Depression, you referenced World War II.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that you were born in the 50s, I would suspect,
I was.
maybe.
Yes.
So
Yes.
you're a 50s child. I was born in 1949, so you and I share the same
Uh-huh.
decade frame. My
Uh-huh.
father was a returning soldier from World War II, fought in the Battle of the Bulge.
Oh my
He
goodness.
drank. We grew up in Western North Carolina. We didn't grow up suffering. We didn't grow up rich by any means. My mother had education on her side. My father had life on his side. He worked for the power company. He played music, Appalachian music, and he also would take the belt off because he felt like we needed some sort of training. And
Yeah.
by all
Yeah.
measure, it was abuse. My
Yes, of
father came
course.
out of World War II. Could there be any more abusive situation than a war? I don't think
That's right.
so. No matter what
No.
war it is, pick any of them from the beginning to the end or
Of
from the
course.
beginning to now. So
Right.
we live in a world that has abuse as part of its DNA
Right,
in the same way that we have love as part of the DNA.
right,
Abuse, love, joy,
right.
tragedy, all the emotions and all the behavioral results of each emotional impulse. Can we eliminate abuse?
Mm. You know, my focus in my education and practice was on families. I worked with abusive families and their kids. The only way I know how to eliminate the way I worked with clients and minister, the way I worked with them was to see the light of the divine in them, no matter what their story was like. You know, to recognize in them that they were a divine child of the Creator and to reflect that back had more healing power in it than anything I could say or anything the social worker was doing or the therapist or the system that's put together to try to help these people. Love is lacking. You know, you send them to a psychiatrist or a psychologist. They have a 45-minute session. They're not supposed to get close relationship wise with their client, right? You have to keep that distance. Okay, where is the love in that? As a minister, I could actually say to a client, I really love you if I really felt it. It had to be real. But if I could see the light in them, the divinity in them, and say, I love that about you, it healed them more than I don't know. And I got that from my own therapist, who was a social worker, but she broke all the rules, took me to lunch, met my family because she loved me, you know. So I learned from her that, you know, the missing element in healing is that love. It's a pure, simple thing.
The light of the divine implies
Mm-hmm.
something
Mm-hmm.
beyond our dimension.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
We're out there in the unseen space, in the space of belief, which requires no scientific evidence because it's belief after all, right?
that's right. That's right.
When you come across somebody burdened with all of the troubles and trials and tribulations
Mm-hmm.
that every country song is addressed over the years from Nashville, and then others as well. The folk songs address it as well. Lay down my troubles by the riverside, that sort of thing. When you
Right,
come
right.
across somebody burdened so
Yeah,
heavily with the earthly
yeah.
troubles, how do you suggest to them
Mm-hmm.
there's a light, and it's a metaphor? I've never seen the light of the divine because I see the light of the day or the light
Right,
that comes
right.
from the stars at night. And yet I sense there must be something more. So, how do
Right.
you
Mm.
unpack that idea so that the burdened person sitting in
Mm-hmm.
front of you in your therapist office needing love, how do you get that across to them?
Well, I think it's different for every client because no one person is the same or carries their burden the same. Some don't realize they're carrying that burden or that it has that impact on their life. But when I say that, you know, in reality, you are not what happened to you. It's sad what happened to you. It's sad that you're going through this, but that's not what I see. I see you. And you are you no matter what happened to you, no matter, you know, what war you were in, what trauma you experienced. You think you're carrying, you think you're morphing into, you're wearing the trauma like an identity, and it's not. That's not who you are. It's something you experience. It's horrible, but you are not that. You are what I see, and that's that light of God in you. I see it. That's usually how it goes down.
How do you experience that light of God? And the reason I'm asking,
Mm,
because there are people listening out there
mhm,
who are devout
mhm,
Christians. There are
mhm.
people listening out there who are complete, utter atheists. They don't believe in anything. You know,
Yeah,
there's nothing but dark void after the fact.
yeah, yeah.
How do you experience that? Why is that so
Well,
potent and
I
real for you?
because I received it from my therapist. I experienced it from her. I mean, I was raised Catholic and I didn't know what the divine light meant or whatever word you want to put on it. And I've done this with atheists. I've had atheists find their way to my door because I have a pact with whatever you want to call that out there. I mean, if you're Christian, you want to call it Jesus, whatever you want to call it. I think it's one and the same. But, I had a pact that if somebody knocks on my door, I'm supposed to work with them. So whoever came to my door, I would be there. I would be available. And I've worked with many atheists who are the most loving, kindest, genuine people. But, I would have to explain it to them differently. I see a light in you that, maybe you don't see when you look in the mirror, you don't see that light of your personality, of your creation, of who you are, of your creativity. You don't see it, but I do. I see it. I'm not going to force on them that you have to know that this has to be called by this terminology or that terminology. I mean, what good would that be? That defeats the whole thing I believe.
I've often wondered when people say they're atheist, what
Hmm.
they really mean by that. My
Hmm.
understanding of atheism is the person who's the atheist
Hmm.
does not believe there's one entity somewhere running the show.
Right.
They believe that there are more possibilities and variations on that theme than just CEO sitting on the throne
Yeah.
calling the shots and
Right.
expecting everybody to fall in line. The Sun King in France, merci beaucoup, messieurs.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
understand atheism as that. And with that frame, I would say that I don't believe the universe, divinity, the
Uh-huh.
cosmos, infinity is ruled by one character sitting somewhere in a chair.
Uh-huh.
There must be more to it than that. And that sense of must be more is,
Hmm.
in my mind, what I call divinity. Because if there
Hmm.
must be more, I must
Hmm.
be a part of the more as
Right.
well as a part of the present.
I agree. One of the words I would use for that is the Christ, not associated with the last name of Jesus, as many people think it is, but the Christ meaning the totality of everything, the totality of everything. And if Christians believe, Jesus came down as the Christ, I think if he came down as the Christ, he came down to show us we are part of the Christhood. And this is how we manifest. We all manifest as a human being, perhaps from this Christhood, this oneness, whatever word you want to use. Now, my book is written with a Christian background because I was raised Catholic. I told the story truthfully, and I always feel like I have the figure Jesus standing right at the right side of me. Call it whatever you want. I have a presence there that protects me and guides me and comforts me. Maybe it's all in my mind or maybe it's in my soul, but whatever you want to say, I don't feel the need to defend to anyone that there's a intuitive part that comes from that. So I can kind of figure out what's going on, which I think occurs with kids in trauma. Kids in trauma become very intuitive. They need to read the landscape so they know how to keep themselves safe. And I'll just be quiet because they're in a bad mood, or I'm going to go in my room so I don't get hit, or I'm going to, they become very intuitive. They kind of know what's coming at them. So I have a lot of that. A lot of my sisters have a lot of that as well. So I think it maybe just as a kind of a gift we get. We kind of know what's coming.
Well, I think that we do intuitively know that because we're part of the whole cosmic
Yeah,
proposition and we're animals as well. Humans are
right.
animals and we have our own
They have
style
intuition.
of working through
Yeah.
life. Another thing that gives me comfort in terms of trying to unpack these ideas
Uh-huh.
by asking questions and having conversations like this, I've come to believe we often limit the divine presence by giving it prepositions to work with: in,
Hmm.
out, up, down, through, around. Jesus
Right.
came
Right.
down
Which I
from.
say from where, right? Because he was right here. When I just contradicted myself, he's right here beside me
Well, I mean, well, it's
and
it's a
in me
stand
and all around. Yeah.
it's a standard thing. Did
Hmm.
Jesus come down? Did
Uh-huh.
Jesus emerge? Does Jesus even care about ups and downs? Does the divinity that holds it all together even have an awareness of that? I mean, after all,
Hmm.
there are a trillion black holes out there this divinity's working with, in addition to my dust on the shelf.
Right, right. Who knows? So I think, it's like Jungian collective consciousness is what maybe I hear you describing is that everything is one. It's just all one. And I think that we all have innately in us the need and the ability to experience that, but we forget. I call it a remembrance. We forget who we are, that we are part of that divinity or collective unconscious, that creation. We are part of that, and as part of that, we have creative abilities. We can create, right? Babies, I love the imaginative storm idea that you have. It's all creation. And I think we just forget. We forget who we are. And I think that's elemental in healing as well, because you pretty much get through anything if you remember who you really are. If you remember that power inside of you, you know, you're going to make it.
And it's important to always remember, whether we like it or not, we're always creating. You wake up and
Mm-hmm.
you make the bed, or you don't make the bed, and either way,
Sometimes,
you're creating something. You
right.
make breakfast or you don't make breakfast. If you don't make
Right.
breakfast, you create hunger. If you make breakfast, you have food on the table you created, and you eliminate hunger. You're taking it in and you're giving it away. I'm thinking now about your ministry. You're a
Mm-hmm.
therapist, you work with trauma, abuse, etc. What about your ministry, and what about truth and giving it away?
Mm-hmm.
Because you talk about that as well. You have to give it away, and
Mm-hmm.
yet you have to accept it. Isn't there a bit of a dramatic tension between those two propositions?
Well, when you forget, but if it's all one, how could there be any tension in giving or receiving? If we forget, then it's like, yes, exactly as you say, but I try to remember. But we all forget. We all forget. And then, just being reminded or having rituals in your day, or some people pray, some people meditate. I like to sit under a tree, especially when the weather's nice, but I probably won't go out in the ice storm tomorrow. But, that will help me remember that I am a part of everything that is. I am that I am is all of us, is all of everything. Things we don't even know up in the sky or down in the earth that we can't comprehend under the oceans, but we're part of it all. When you remember that, to me, it's a very, very empowering thing. And it erases for me any conflict.
My
Because
good,
what are you giving or what are you receiving is just you
quite
or
true.
the other.
That's quite true. And I'm thinking about this idea of accepting the truth.
Mm-hmm.
I accept the truth. My father was abusive. I accept the
Mm-hmm.
truth. My father was a soldier. He
Mm-hmm.
was 30 years old when I was born. I accept the truth that my father was a young man. He
Mm-hmm.
had his own burdens to bear.
Mm-hmm.
And by accepting that truth, I feel a sense of joy. I feel a
Mm-hmm.
sense of relief. I feel a sense of understanding about the man who was struggling as we all struggle. He was no
Right.
different than I was. So when I accept that truth, what I have to give away is the story of the acceptance and how the acceptance freed me
Mm-hmm.
from this burden
Mm-hmm.
that became something else because it went from burden to story, story to release, release to acceptance, acceptance
Very
to
good.
gift to you.
Very good. I wrote a workbook. Um, I used to use it with my clients, and then social workers have used it and counselors, and it's what your inner child knows. And the first step I put in there to healing is the ability to accept the truth of your childhood. You don't even have to define it. You don't even have to, know the totality of it. You just have to accept that your childhood was less than it could have been, or that it was awful, or whatever. So maybe for some people, not helpful to dwell on exactly what happened at that particular point. We can do that later. But to accept, if you don't accept that, there's no going forward, because the denial will just keep someone from healing further. So I love that you said that, because it is a very freeing thing Once you accept it, then you could separate yourself from what occurred to you. It occurred to you, but it is not who you are.
I'd like to ask you a question I've never asked anyone before.
Okay, I hope I can answer
Well, I
it.
don't know if you can because I don't know if there is an answer for this.
Mhm,
I, I worked for years with Julia Cameron, who wrote the book The Artist Way. And
mhm,
Julia and I were business partners. We ran
mhm,
Artist Way creativity camps for 6 or 7 years in Taos, New Mexico. It was a fairly intense proposition in the 90s. And
wow.
so much of what we came across in the conversations with folks who came through those camps, they really were just conferences. We called them camps because it was in New Mexico. You come camping, why
Right.
not? You have some
That's where
stars, you know, look
yeah.
up. There's a Milky Way there. You're camping out.
Yeah.
People talked about their inner child. And
Hmm.
that's a topic. People refer to the inner child. I must refer to my
Hmm.
inner child. Here's my question.
Hmm.
Does the inner child ever grow up?
I hope not. I hope not. What has to happen is that an adult ego state develops while protecting that inner child, because that inner child didn't have any protection. And the inner child is what plays. That's where creativity comes from. It's imagination. That's joy. That's laughter. You don't want to lose that. But what it's lacking in individuals who are traumatized is a healthy adult ego state that could be positive parent or negative parent. A lot of times, this is what I'm saying, if you can heal the adult, they may not pass on, even unknowingly, trauma to their kids or unresolved trauma. Because your adult's either going to be a nurturing, positive parent or a critical parent. You hear the terminology all the time about the critical mind. You got to confront your critical mind. That's the negative parent that you carry in you that was probably one of your parents or caretakers. But the working toward healing the child by letting the adult in the individual develop that can nurture that inner child for themselves. Imagine, you no longer need to have that awful relationship with that boyfriend that beats you because you've got yourself protecting your inner child. You're nurturing your inner child. Things that some of my clients would do along the way would be, I'd say, take your inner child to the movie, just you and your child, all by themselves. Yeah, who cares what anybody thinks? You're never alone when you have that inner child, and that inner child is your divinity. That's your soul. That's the part you want to protect and you want to grow. So you can have inner childs at all different stages of development, in my opinion, which could be quite interesting to deal with. You want to raise your child from early childhood, your inner child up through, young adulthood or whatever, but you want to maintain that innocence that 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 inner child forgot about.
So when we speak of the inner child, or when you speak of the
Mm-hmm.
inner child, you're talking about this joyous innocence that's unsoiled by the ebbs and flows of the
Yes,
human condition.
yes, yes. Even though the child is the one that experienced all the trauma, it didn't change who they are. It's what they experienced. And if you broke your ankle when you were a child and you had a nurturing teacher come up to you and say, "Oh, I'm so sorry that happened to you. Let's help you with that broken ankle. Let's go get some help." And it's not your fault. It happens. I mean, that child's going to say, "Oh, I remember when I broke my ankle. I had this wonderful teacher and everybody took care of me and I got gifts." Quite different than if someone a little girl broke their ankle, or a little boy, and got beat for it, right? Why don't you watch where you're going? You see the difference?
Oh,
The
I
child
do.
is the same. The child is the same. It's the experience around them that we have to separate them from.
So that sense of innocence, which comes with
Mm-hmm.
the child,
Mm-hmm.
is something we all have because, as we said earlier in this conversation, we
Yeah,
remember everything.
right.
It's not
Oh, that's
going
true. Yeah.
anywhere. I have that experience, all of those experiences inside of me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking now of this idea of the inner child as an atmospheric awareness within the
Beautiful.
emotional sensibilities of one's adulthood.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's beautifully put. Mm-hmm.
And then I can draw on that. When I'm training here, I'm training the
Mm-hmm.
mature animal, the creature that's
Mm-hmm.
fully mature. I will never go back to a time when I was not grown up. I am grown. I am sometimes amused when people my age will say, well, gee, I'll never grow up. I'm going, have you looked in the mirror lately? Come on,
Maybe their
please.
body did.
Your body does grow.
Yeah,
And yet we can give ourselves as fully formed adults permission to absorb the purity
yeah.
and the hopefulness of that inner child atmosphere.
Absolutely. And that's where I think so much healing occurs. And that's, you call put whatever word. I've never asked my clients, you have to use this word, this, what word is it for you? What's that like for you? It's so important that it be from them. And how can we grow more of that for you? What would you do, if you were parenting yourself at that time? And you'd be surprised some of the answers you get. Someone that's just not aware of all of this yet, let's say, well, I beat my ass. Okay, now we know that's the negative critical parent talking. And we map it all out more like a educational session than anything else. Like here's, the inner child, and here's the inner child can do all these things to get your attention. It could be a rebel, or it could be a caretaker, over caretaker. It could do all these different things trying to survive and get your attention, which but just causes all these crazy decisions then you in your adult body are making. So I think it's a very, very powerful concept, using whatever words anyone wants to on this kind of growth.
And when you ask someone to gain the sovereignty that belongs to them,
Mhm.
to think back on the stories in their own style, in their own fashion that have formed them, by
Yeah.
giving them the prompt, the open ended prompt, the appreciative prompt, hey,
Mhm.
it's your style, it's your story. Imagine it as you please. Right
Right.
away, you
Right.
have touched into the essence of what it was like to be a child in the sandbox. The child
Right.
does not know what's up and what's down in the
What do you want to
sandbox.
do in the sand?
Just
Yeah.
do whatever you want with it.
What do you want to do in the sand? And you're not going to get in trouble for whatever you want to do in the
Now,
sand.
one of the things we've been thinking about in the Imaginative Storm work,
Hmm.
we talk a lot about imagination, creativity, spin the kaleidoscope of your mind, let your imagination free form.
I like
We
it.
also talk a lot about the rational mind and the internal critic. Over the years, I've often said, oh, you have to get out of your rational mind, let your free form creative mind do the work. We're
Hmm.
coming around to thinking, wait a moment. The reason why the rational mind often resists isn't because it has a bad job. It's because you haven't given it what it needs in order to function in collaboration with the rest of you. And the internal critic, of course, is there to actually criticize in most creative ways if you train it to be a good critic.
I love constructive criticism when I'm writing and when I'm doing things. Like I crave it. But I think there was a point in my development, my healing, I wouldn't have been able to hear it because it would have gone straight to my defeated little child inside of me, that I wasn't adult enough to hear constructive criticism. And if someone would say, oh, get over it, it's constructive criticism, I just didn't have the emotional maturity, or the strong adult ego at that point to hear it. So, or to see it as a gift. It wasn't a gift at that stage of my development. So that's why I'm saying, working these inner children up to different developmental stages so they have a healthy adult ego state. It's healthy. They love constructive criticism. It makes whatever they're doing better. I mean, why wouldn't you want someone who knows better to teach you a way that you could be better? That's such a gift. But if you're really crushed, it's really hard to hear because you get that constant critical parent inside of you saying, you're not good enough. See, you don't know how to do it. So it's a delicate balance.
And that crushing you're describing,
Yeah.
we've all
Hmm.
experienced it. It's nothing new. It isn't criticism, it's crushing experience. What you
Hmm.
and I have been doing in the last bit of time that we've been together, we
Hmm.
are doing a critical analysis of
Hmm.
divinity,
Hmm.
of abuse,
Hmm.
of breaking water, of
Right.
childhood trauma. This
Right.
is the way criticism can work in a very complete,
And
mature
yes,
way.
very positive growth. Yes. All intended to create something better and intended to have growth. That's the difference. When you have a wounded inner child, everything that was fed to them through behaviors or conversations was not intended to help them grow to emotional maturity. It was intended to hurt them. So we can't just turn a switch and say, okay, it hurt me then, but now I know how to not let things hurt me. It doesn't happen that way. They have to grow up. Many people in their 70s and 80s have never grown up. And we say, oh, come on, grow up. But it just doesn't work that way. It's the heart, it has to heal so that they can risk growing up.
The old cliche, it's easier said than done,
Uh-huh.
is exactly the right comment for what you just said. It is
I agree.
easier said than done. Oh, just grow
Right.
up. Barbara, we have arrived at the time when we need to
Okay.
say goodbye. We could talk forever. I can see
I
that.
think we could.
Would
Yeah.
you close with a few thoughts for folks? Make sure you tell
Mhm.
everybody how to connect with your book and the work you're doing,
Oh,
with
okay.
you and what you're up to, so we can go
Mm.
away with some of those treasures that you have to offer.
Oh, well, thank you for the opportunity to do that. I will say it's a topic that a lot of individuals don't want to talk about. So if you were, to all your listeners, if you were a survivor of child maltreatment of any form, um, you might want to pick up a copy of Broken Water. You don't have to buy it. You can get, some libraries are carrying it. Just go to your library and ask them, request it. They'll get it for you. You will have 11 women that you will feel like are listening to your story because they've come before you and they've had similar experiences. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. Find a mentor. I was blessed to have the most wonderful mentor, a guy by the name of David Grove, um, who gets you, who's willing to support you, who's willing to listen without judgment, without criticism, simply will not belittle you because you've had this experience, and they won't tell you how to heal it. Don't go to a friend who's going to tell you, oh, if you just do this or if you just do that. They have no clue what your path is going to be, and that's okay. But seek help. It takes the strength of a warrior to seek therapy when you're dealing with such delicate issues, but I highly recommend you do that. And just remember, you're an essence of this divinity we've been talking about. Just remember that. So I hope that helps.
Barbara Lane, thank you for being on Twice 5 Miles Radio. Broken Water is the name of your book, and our water has been very smooth in this
Yeah.
conversation. I thank you for
Thanks
that.
for having me. I enjoyed it so much.
And there you go, my friends. Thus concludes my conversation with Barbara Lane. If you would like to learn much more about Barbara, barbaralane.info is her website, barbaralane.info. There you can learn about her consulting, her books, and many of the other offerings that she has. We live in particularly potent times with lots of uncertainty, and as you could tell when Barbara was speaking, she has a sense of how to soften things, how to reframe things, how to help people take the trauma that exists in their lives and turn it into something a little softer, also the trauma that's outside of our lives, the things that happen beyond us, the political situations right now. If there was ever a time to use the word uncertainty, now's the time. Uncertainty is what exists in our culture right now. And everybody I talk to reports the same sensibility. I just don't know what's going on, they will say. Is there trauma in that? I suspect so. And yet, even in all this disruption, there are things that we can do. We can show up. If you have fire in your belly about something you're passionate about or you have desire to do, now's a good time to sit down at the desk or wherever you would like to go and start doing some of that stuff that you desire to do, whatever it is. On that note, I'd like to read a short prose piece I wrote recently that touch on some of the ideas that Barbara and I were talking about. It's titled, "The Ones Who Feed Fires." Thirst belongs to the ones who feed fires. Women and men watch over grace in the ruin of forgotten things. All in this together, the conductor says every day on the train from Newark Airport to Union Station. The money men behind glass tower over birds that can't sing. They count work, toil, and trouble. Am I free? Am I able to find water and geese and houses with light falling across the rooftops? Get to work, the money men say. My hands orchestrate silver splashes and sure-footed rhythms. Daddy, come home, the children said before Daddy vanished over the ridge into smoke and flowers and insurance policies that would never pay out. I sat with my friend last fall, body warm, hot tea, memory gone, lost behind the cogs, the machines, and the handmade brooms he once made when he understood fields and love and jazz made by bees. Payday, payday, cash that check. Women and men watch over grace in the ruin of forgotten things. Ice falls across old windows. The church on the corner has no need for wind. It belongs to the trees and God and the little things that lie so easy at the altar of lost faith, lost dreams. You'll find me at the river with the white feathers and the crows. It's my turn now. Shoulder to the wheel. Thirst belongs to the ones who feed fires. That piece I just read, I wrote it in 10 minutes during one of our Imaginative Storm Writing Prompt of the Week gatherings. Feeding a fire. I always think of the campfire when I was a boy. Of course, you don't have to be a child to sit around a campfire and enjoy tossing wood on the coals. Anybody can do it. When we feed our fires, we do more than just make flames. We actually feed ourselves and others around us. And on that note, we've arrived at the end of our show. I'm grateful for my conversation with Barbara Lane. Barbara Lane Info for more on Barbara's work as a writer. And so with that, I'll say you've been listening to Twice 5 Miles Radio, fertile ground for conversations worth listening to and remembering. I'm your host, James Navé, always airing first on WPVM LP Asheville 103.7 and streaming online, WPVMFM.org, the voice of Asheville heard all over the world, and on other community radio stations like KCEI, Cultural Energy Radio, out of Taos, New Mexico. I'd like to thank Walter Parks for our theme song, walterparks.com for more on Walter's music. If you'd like to reach out to me, Navé at jamesnavé.com. I would love to hear from you. Navé is spelled N-A-V-E. And before we go, please remember, on Friday, June the 6th, 5 to 7 p.m. at the Taos Community Center, TCA, we're having a gala book launch opening party celebrating Taos Portraits 2 by Paul O'Connor. It's free. It'll be a lot of fun. Full of local color. You can come and be part of that colorful localness. It's a chance to celebrate the art and the artist of Taos. Guess what? There's an after party at Hotel Willa. We hope you can make your way there on Friday, June the 6th. I'd like to also remind you that the Imaginative Storm Writing Project sponsors Twice 5 Miles Radio. If you would like to improve your writing skills, imaginativestorm.com is a good place to go to start that process. Here are 5 Imaginative Storm tips you can use right now. 1. Doubt is part of the process. Keep going anyway. 2. Laughter is a storytelling tool. Don't underestimate it. 3. Every story matters, especially the ones you haven't told yet. 4. You don't have to identify as a writer to be a storyteller. If you've lived, you've got stories to tell. 5. Your imagination goes well beyond fanciful leaps. It's your navigation tool. It will help you find your way. And speaking of finding your way, if you happen to be in Asheville on May 9 through 11, you will find me at the Leaf Global Arts Retreat. I'm hosting a whole bunch of workshops there. It's in Black Mountain, North Carolina, just west of Black Mountain, actually. I've been involved with Leaf Global Arts for years. It's really a pleasure to be back in Asheville doing more of that work. I truly, truly enjoy it. theleaf.org for more on the retreat. Maybe I'll see you there. So once again, thank you ever so much for listening, being part of this hour. And wherever you are, lean into the world and enjoy what you're doing. And until next time, maybe, just maybe, I'll catch you on that turnaround somewhere down the line.